My fingers trembled as I slid the folded napkin beneath his plate. The words I'd scribbled in rushed panic stared back at me through the white linen. Don't drink it. Leave now. My heartbeat thundered so violently I was certain the entire dining room could hear it echoing off the crystal chandeliers. I was just a waiter, a college dropout working the evening shift at Marcello's, the kind of high-end Italian restaurant where a single meal cost more than my weekly rent. Tonight was supposed to be like any other shift. Serve the wealthy, collect my tips, go home exhausted. But 30 minutes ago, everything changed when I witnessed something in the kitchen that I absolutely should not have seen. The chef, Vincent, a man who'd worked here for years, had taken a wineglass set aside for table 7 and added something to it. Something white and powdery that dissolved almost instantly into the deep red Cabernet. My stomach had dropped. I'd frozen in the doorway holding my tray, watching him swirl the glass with practiced ease before setting it on the serving counter. He hadn't noticed me. I'd backed away silently, my mind racing with terrible possibilities. Table 7. The man everyone called Mr. Thorne. I knew who he was. Everyone in this city knew Sawyer Thorne, even if they pretended otherwise. He wasn't the kind of businessman who showed up in Forbes magazines or gave TED Talks. He was the kind whose name made people lower their voices, whose presence cleared rooms, whose reputation preceded him like a shadow that swallowed light. They said he controlled half the underground operations in the city. Smuggling, laundering, things I didn't want to think about too closely. His eyes were cold blue steel, sharp enough to cut through lies. His jawline could have been carved from marble, and those hands, I'd heard stories about those hands, about what they'd done. Blood doesn't wash away completely, no matter how expensive the Italian suit. So why was I trying to save him? I didn't have an answer. Maybe it was because watching someone get poisoned, anyone, felt fundamentally wrong. Maybe it was because despite his reputation, he'd always been polite to me, never condescending like some of the other wealthy patrons. Or maybe I was just an idiot with a death wish. I'd placed his entree down with shaking hands, slipping the note beneath the porcelain edge where only he would find it. Then I'd stepped back, trying to appear casual, professional, just doing my job. Nothing to see here. I made it exactly 2 steps before his hand shot out and wrapped around my wrist. Wait, that single word spoken in a voice like gravel and whiskey made my breath catch in my throat. I stopped, every muscle in my body locking up. Slowly I turned to look at him. He'd found the note. His expression hadn't changed, still that same unreadable mask of controlled power. But his eyes, those eyes were now fixed on the paper reading my hasty warning. The seconds stretched into eternity. The ambient noise of the restaurant, the soft classical music, the murmur of conversation, the gentle clink of silverware, all of it faded into background static. There was only him, only me, only the note between us that could get me killed. Then he looked up, directly at me. Those blue eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made me feel completely exposed, like he could see past my black vest and white shirt, past my skin, straight into my terrified soul. I'd never felt so vulnerable in my life. Why did you write this? His grip on my wrist tightened fractionally. Not painful, but impossible to escape. The words stuck in my throat like broken glass. I swallowed hard, forcing them out. I saw something. In the kitchen. Please just leave. You have to trust me. A smile curved his lips. Small, dangerous, the kind of expression that made my survival instincts scream warnings. You're asking me to trust you? His thumb pressed against my pulse point, undoubtedly feeling how fast my heart was racing. Do you have any idea who I am? Of course I knew. That was exactly why terror was flooding my system. I know, I whispered, barely audible over the restaurant's ambiance. That's why I'm scared. But someone put something in your wine. They're going to kill you. For a moment, nothing happened. He simply studied me, those predatory eyes searching for deception, for ulterior motives. Then, in one fluid motion, he stood. At his full height, Sawyer Thorne was even more imposing than when seated. Easily 6'2", broad-shouldered, commanding. He released my wrist only to grasp my hand instead, his fingers interweaving with mine in a grip that was both possessive and protective. Come with me. It wasn't a request. Before I could process what was happening, he was pulling me away from the table, away from the poisoned wine, through the dining room toward the exit. Heads turned. Conversations faltered. Every eye in Marcello's was suddenly on us. On Sawyer Thorne, the most dangerous man in the city, dragging a terrified waiter out of the restaurant like I was something precious he refused to let go of. No one stopped us. No one even spoke. The manager, who normally would have fired me on the spot for abandoning my section, simply stared with wide eyes and pressed lips. Because you didn't question Sawyer Thorne. You didn't get in his way. You survived by staying silent and invisible. I stumbled along beside him, my mind spinning with panic and confusion. What had I just done? I'd meant to save his life, to give him a warning so he could leave safely. But now I was being pulled into something I didn't understand. Something that felt far bigger and more dangerous than a simple poisoning attempt. Was I safe with him? Or had I just invited my own death by getting involved? The cool night air hit my face as we exited through the main entrance. The valet parking attendant took one look at Sawyer's expression and immediately fled to retrieve his car. We stood there under the restaurant's elegant awning, his hands still gripping mine, and I finally found my voice again. "Mr. Thorne, I don't—" "Sawyer," he interrupted, his gaze still scanning the street, alert and watchful. "If you just saved my life, you can call me Sawyer." The sleek black Audi pulled up to the curb. The valet practically threw himself out of the driver's seat, keys jangling as he handed them over with a stammered, "Here you go, sir." Sawyer opened the passenger door and looked at me expectantly. "Get in, Jerry." He knew my name. Of course he did. A man like him probably knew the names of everyone who'd ever served him, filed away in that calculating mind for potential future use. But hearing it spoken in his dark, commanding voice made something flutter dangerously in my chest. "Where are we going?" I managed to ask, though I was already moving toward the car, drawn by some inexplicable force I couldn't name. "Somewhere safe," Sawyer replied, his expression grim. "Because the moment you gave me that warning, Jerry, you became a target too." Sawyer drove with the focused precision of someone who'd spent a lifetime evading danger. We didn't head toward any part of the city I recognized. Instead, he took a series of turns that seemed random at first, but I gradually realized he was checking for tails, making sure no one followed us. My heart hadn't stopped racing since we'd left Marcello's, and now a new fear crept in. What if I'd made a catastrophic mistake? What if this was worse than staying at the restaurant? "We need to go back to the kitchen," Sawyer said suddenly, breaking the tense silence that had filled the car. "What? No, that's insane. Vincent saw you hovering near the service counter." His eyes flicked to me briefly before returning to the road. "He knows someone witnessed what he did. If we don't confront this now, he'll disappear, and whoever hired him will send someone else." The logic was sound, but that didn't make it any less terrifying. "You want to confront the man who just tried to poison you?" "I want answers." Sawyer's jaw tightened. "And I want to make sure you're not blamed for his failure." That thought hadn't even occurred to me. Vincent's employer, whoever they were, would be looking for someone to punish. The chef would throw me under the bus to save himself. My hands clenched in my lap. "Okay, let's go back." Sawyer made a U-turn, and within minutes we were pulling into the alley behind Marcello's. The kitchen's back entrance was typically used for deliveries and staff smoke breaks. At this hour it should be relatively quiet. He parked, then reached across to open the glove compartment. Inside was a handgun. My blood went cold. "You're bringing a gun?" "I'm always carrying," he said matter-of-factly, checking the magazine before tucking it into a holster I hadn't noticed beneath his jacket. "But I won't use it unless absolutely necessary. Stay behind me, and if things go bad, you run. Understand?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. We approached the kitchen door. Sawyer tried the handle, unlocked as staff often left it during service hours. He pushed it open slowly, and the familiar sounds and smells of the kitchen hit me. The sizzle of pans, the sharp scent of garlic and wine, the controlled chaos of dinner service. But there, near the wine storage, stood Vincent. He was holding the poisoned glass I'd seen earlier, staring at it with an expression that mixed frustration and fury. When he heard us enter, his head snapped up. His face went through a rapid sequence of emotions. Surprise, recognition, then something harder. Calculate. "Mr. Thorne." Vincent set the glass down carefully, his chef's whites somehow looking sinister now that I knew what he'd done. "I wasn't expecting you to return." Sawyer moved further into the kitchen, angling his body to keep me partially shielded. "I'm sure you weren't. Want to explain what's in that Cabernet? I don't know what you're talking about. Vincent's hand drifted toward his jacket pocket. Don't. Sawyer's voice dropped to a lethal register. I've known you for 3 years, Vincent. You've cooked for me dozens of times. I trusted you. And you betrayed that. Something flickered across Vincent's face. Guilt? Maybe. Or regret. But it vanished quickly, replaced by cold resignation. The price was too good. You understand how it is, Mr. Thorne. Business. Who paid you? Does it matter? Vincent's hand was now fully inside his pocket. You weren't supposed to find out. That waiter, his eyes cut to me, full of malice. He ruined everything. My stomach dropped. Sawyer moved then, lightning fast, closing the distance between them. But Vincent was ready. He pulled out a small pistol, the kind easily concealed, and aimed it at Sawyer's chest. Jerry, get out. Sawyer barked. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. This was my fault. I'd brought us back here, and now Vincent's finger tightened on the trigger. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed kitchen. I screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the ringing in my ears. Except Sawyer wasn't hit. He'd moved with impossible speed, twisting to the side as the bullet punched through a stainless steel refrigerator door behind him. Before Vincent could fire again, Sawyer grabbed his wrist, wrenching it upward. The gun went off a second time, this one hitting the ceiling. Then it was over. Sawyer twisted Vincent's arm behind his back with brutal efficiency, forcing him face first onto the prep counter. The gun clattered to the tile floor. Other kitchen staff had scattered at the first shots, smart enough not to get involved in whatever this was. Last chance, Sawyer growled, pressing Vincent harder against the counter. Who hired you? Vincent laughed bitterly, blood trickling from where his face had impacted the steel surface. You think I'd tell you? They'll do worse than kill me. Sawyer pulled out his phone, one hand still keeping Vincent pinned. He made a quick call. Dante, I need a cleanup crew at Marcello's kitchen. Now. A pause. Yes. He's alive. Barely. Within minutes, 2 men in dark suits arrived through the same back entrance we'd used. They moved with military precision, securing Vincent with zip ties and hauling him out without a word. One of them paused to speak quietly with Sawyer, nodding at whatever instructions he received. Then we were alone again, surrounded by the wreckage of the confrontation. My legs felt weak, shaky. The adrenaline that had kept me upright was draining away, leaving exhaustion and shock in its wake. Sawyer turned to me, his expression softening slightly. Are you hurt? I shook my head, unable to form words. Come on. He placed a hand on my lower back, gentle despite everything that had just happened. We can't stay here. He guided me back to the car. This time, when we drove away, there was no circuitous route. Sawyer headed straight for what I assumed was his destination all along. My apartment? No. We passed my neighborhood entirely. Instead, we pulled into the underground parking garage of a luxury high-rise downtown, the kind of building where penthouses sold for millions. Where are we? I finally asked, my voice hoarse. My place, Sawyer replied. Parking in a reserved spot. You'll be safe here while I figure out who's behind this. Safe. The word felt foreign. I'd stopped feeling safe the moment I saw Vincent poison that wine. But as Sawyer helped me out of the car, his hand steady and warm against mine, I realized something unsettling. Despite the guns and violence, despite everything I'd just witnessed, I felt safer with him than I had in years, which was either the smartest instinct I'd ever had, or the most dangerous delusion. Sawyer's penthouse was nothing like I'd imagined. I'd expected cold luxury, all glass and chrome, sterile and unwelcoming. Instead, the space felt lived in, comfortable. Dark leather furniture, warm wood accents, bookshelves filled with actual books rather than designer objects. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city lights sprawling below us like a galaxy. He locked the door behind us with 3 separate mechanisms: deadbolt, chain, and what looked like a biometric scanner. Paranoid? Maybe. But given what had happened tonight, perhaps justified. Sit, he instructed, gesturing toward the couch. I'll get the first aid kit. You're the one who almost got shot, I protested weakly, and you're the one who looks ready to collapse. He disappeared down a hallway before I could argue further. I sank onto the couch, my body finally acknowledging the trauma of the evening. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I clasped them together, trying to regain some semblance of control. What was I doing here? In a mafia boss's apartment. After witnessing an attempted murder and a violent confrontation, this wasn't my life. I served pasta and poured wine. I didn't belong in this world of guns and betrayal. Sawyer returned carrying a well-stocked medical kit. He set it on the coffee table, then studied me with those penetrating blue eyes. You're in shock. I'm fine. You're not. He sat beside me, closer than necessary, and opened the kit. Let me see your hands. I'm not injured. You cut yourself on something. Look. He took my right hand gently, turning it to reveal a shallow gash across my palm I hadn't even noticed. Must have happened during the chaos in the kitchen. It dried in a thin line across my skin. His touch was surprisingly gentle as he cleaned the wound with antiseptic. I hissed at the sting and he murmured an apology. Almost done. Watching him work, this dangerous man who'd just disarmed an attacker with brutal efficiency, now carefully bandaging my minor injury, felt surreal. His hands were steady, practiced. How many times had he done this? How many wounds had those hands inflicted versus healed? Why are you doing this? The question escaped before I could stop it. Sawyer finished securing the bandage before answering. You saved my life tonight, Jerry. That's not something I take lightly. You don't even know me. I know you risked everything to warn a stranger. He met my gaze, and something in his expression made my breath catch. That tells me more than you realize. Silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken things. Finally, I asked the question that had been haunting me since the kitchen. What happens now? To Vincent, I mean? He'll be questioned until we have the name of whoever hired him. Sawyer's tone went cold. Then he'll face consequences for his betrayal. I didn't want to know what those consequences entailed. And me? You stay here tonight. Tomorrow we'll assess the situation and determine next steps. He stood, collecting the medical supplies. The guest room is through that door. Bathrooms attached. You'll find everything you need. I should call someone. My roommate will wonder where I am. No phones. The command was absolute. Not until we know the scope of this threat. Vincent wasn't working alone. Someone with resources hired him. Until we identify them, any communication could be traced. Panic fluttered in my chest. So I'm just trapped here? Protected here, Sawyer corrected, his expression softening slightly. There's a difference, was there? I wasn't sure anymore, but arguing seemed pointless. I was exhausted, overwhelmed, and completely out of my depth. Okay. Just for tonight. Just for tonight, he agreed, though something in his tone suggested he didn't believe it either. I retreated to the guest room, which was larger than my entire studio apartment. The bed looked impossibly comfortable, dressed in high thread-count linens. The attached bathroom had a walk-in shower with multiple heads and a soaking tub. Luxury I'd only seen in magazines. I should have felt grateful. Safe. Instead, I felt dislocated. Like I'd stepped into someone else's life. After a shower that helped wash away some of the evening's tension, I found pajamas laid out on the bed, expensive silk that definitely weren't there before. Sawyer must have brought them while I was bathing. The gesture felt intimate in a way that made my pulse quicken. Despite the comfortable bed, sleep eluded me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Vincent's gun, heard the deafening crack of gunshots, felt the weight of choices I'd made that led me here. Around 2 in the morning, I gave up and padded into the living room. Sawyer was there, standing by the windows with a glass of amber liquid whiskey. Probably. He'd removed his jacket and tie, rolled up his shirt sleeves. In the dim light from the city below, he looked less like a dangerous criminal and more like a tired man carrying heavy burdens. Can't sleep? He asked without turning around. How did you know I was here? I always know when someone's nearby. He took a sip of his drink. Survival skill. I moved to stand beside him at the window. The city looked peaceful from up here, all twinkling lights and distant traffic. It was hard to believe danger lurked in those streets. Do you ever get used to it? The violence? No. His answer surprised me with its honesty. You just get better at living with it. That sounds exhausting. It is. He turned to face me, and in the low light his features seemed less harsh, more human. But tonight, for the first time in years, someone acted purely to help me. No agenda, no ulterior motive. Just kindness. Do you know how rare that is in my world? I didn't think about it, I admitted. I just reacted. That's what makes it significant. He set his glass down on a nearby table. Most people calculate risk before acting. You didn't. You saw danger and tried to prevent it. Consequences be damned. Heat crept up my neck. Some would call that stupid. I call it brave. His hand rose, fingers brushing my jaw in a touch so light I almost thought I'd imagined it. And incredibly dangerous for you. My heart hammered against my ribs. Because now I'm involved. Because now you matter. His thumb traced along my cheekbone and I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. And in my world, Jerry, the people who matter become targets. I should have stepped back. Should have maintained distance. Protected myself. Instead, I heard myself whisper, "Then what do? We adapt." His hand dropped and I felt the loss of contact like a physical ache. We stay vigilant. And we figure out who wants me dead badly enough to hire Vincent. The moment broke. Practical concerns flooding back in. But something had shifted between us in that quiet exchange by the window. An acknowledgement of connection. Fragile and get some rest, Sawyer said, his professional mask sliding back into place. Tomorrow's going to be complicated. I returned to the guest room, but this time when I lay down, my mind wasn't replaying violence. Instead, I kept feeling phantom touches along my jaw, kept hearing his words echo, "Now you matter," and terrifyingly, impossibly, I realized I wanted that to be true. Morning sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, pulling me from restless sleep. The scent of fresh coffee drifted through the penthouse, rich and inviting. I found myself drawn toward the kitchen, still wearing the silk pajamas Sawyer had provided. What I saw made me stop in the doorway. Sawyer stood at the espresso machine, shirtless, a white bandage wrapped around his left shoulder where the bullet had grazed him during last night's confrontation. The early light cast shadows across the defined muscles of his back, highlighting old scars I hadn't noticed before. He moved with casual confidence, as if making morning coffee in expensive loungewear was his daily ritual. "You're awake," he said without turning around, somehow sensing my presence. "Hope you like it strong." "I didn't expect you to be cooking," I admitted, moving into the kitchen. The space was pristine, all marble countertops and professional-grade appliances. He poured 2 cups, handing me one. "I spent last night making calls. The situation has escalated beyond what I initially anticipated." My stomach tightened. How bad? Vincent wasn't working alone, as we suspected. The man who hired him is Tobias Kane, one of my oldest adversaries. Sawyer's expression darkened. He's been trying to eliminate me for years, and now that this attempt failed, he'll become more aggressive. Desperate men make reckless choices. I wrapped my hands around the warm cup, needing something to ground me. "What does that mean for us?" "It means we need to leave the city. Today." His tone left no room for negotiation. "I have a safe location where we can wait while my people handle Kane's organization." "Leave?" "Sawyer, I have a job. Responsibilities." "Your life is the priority here, Jerry." He set his cup down with more force than necessary. "Kane is ruthless. He'll use you to get to me, and I won't let that happen. You need to trust my judgment on this." The intensity in his eyes made my arguments die on my tongue. He genuinely believed I was in danger, and given everything I'd witnessed in the past 24 hours, I couldn't dismiss his concern as paranoia. "How long would we be gone?" "A week. Maybe less if my team works efficiently." He stepped closer, his voice softening. "I understand this disrupts your life, but I need you somewhere secure while I dismantle Kane's operation." I thought about my tiny apartment, my mundane routine, the restaurant job that barely paid rent. None of it seemed worth dying for. "Okay, but I should at least tell my manager I'm taking emergency leave." No contact with anyone. The command was absolute. Kane has informants everywhere. One phone call, one text message could give away our location. We disappear completely. Panic fluttered in my chest. What about my family? If Kane is as dangerous as you say, already handled. Sawyer pulled out his phone, showing me surveillance photos of my parents' house and my younger brother's apartment building. "I have teams watching them around the clock. They're protected, but they won't know it. Discreet surveillance only." The relief that washed over me was so intense I had to sit down on one of the kitchen stools. "You did all this last night?" "I protect what's mine." The possessiveness in his statement should have alarmed me, but instead it sent warmth spreading through my chest. "Your family is safe. Now let me keep you safe too." Within an hour we'd packed minimal luggage, just essentials thrown into 2 bags. Sawyer insisted I leave my phone behind, providing me with a secure burner cell that only had his number programmed into it. We descended to the parking garage where his Audi waited, and soon we were merging onto the highway heading north out of the city. I watched the skyline shrink in the side mirror, wondering when I'd see it again. Everything felt surreal, like I'd stepped into someone else's life. Just days ago, my biggest concern was making enough tips to cover utilities. Now I was fleeing the city with a mafia boss, running from assassins and criminal rivals. Sawyer's hand found mine on the center console, his thumb tracing gentle circles across my knuckles. "But get through this. I promise you'll come out the other side safely." I wanted to believe him, needed to believe him, because the alternative, that I'd made a catastrophic mistake trusting this dangerous man, was too terrifying to contemplate. The drive took several hours, taking us deep into mountainous terrain where civilization gradually disappeared. We stopped only once for gas at a remote station where Sawyer paid cash and kept his face angled away from security cameras. He was practiced at this, I realized, at disappearing, at staying off the grid, at operating in shadows. Finally, as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, we turned onto a barely visible dirt road that wound through dense forest. The path was rough, jolting us over ruts and stones, until we emerged into a small clearing. There sat a cabin, modest, wooden, with a wraparound porch and smoke-stained chimney. "This is it," Sawyer announced. "Killing the engine. Off the books, not registered to any of my known aliases. Only 3 people know this place exists, and I trust them with my life." I climbed out, stretching muscles stiff from hours of sitting. The air here was different, crisp and clean, scented with pine and earth. Birds called from the surrounding trees, and somewhere nearby I could hear the burble of a stream. It was beautiful in a wild, untamed way. Inside, the cabin was surprisingly well appointed. A stone fireplace dominated one wall of the main room. The kitchen, though small, had modern appliances. Through an open doorway, I glimpsed a bedroom with a large bed covered in thick quilts. "There's only one bedroom," I observed, trying to keep my voice neutral. "I'll take the couch," Sawyer said, immediately. "You need proper rest after everything you've been through." We fell into an awkward silence as we unpacked. The intimacy of the situation was suddenly overwhelming. Alone together in an isolated cabin, cut off from the world with nothing but time and proximity. I busied myself putting away the groceries. Sawyer had apparently arranged to be stocked in advance, while he checked window locks and escape routes with professional efficiency. That evening Sawyer cooked dinner, pasta with a simple tomato sauce that was surprisingly delicious. We ate at the small table, the silence between us gradually becoming more comfortable. There was something peaceful about this forced isolation, something that felt almost like playing house, pretending to be normal people living a normal life. "You're good at this," I commented, twirling pasta on my fork. "Cooking, I mean. Necessity taught me." He refilled my water glass. "In my line of work, you can't always rely on others. Self-sufficiency is survival." "That sounds lonely." His eyes met mine across the table, something vulnerable flickering in their depths. "It has been, until recently." The implication hung in the air between us, heavy with meaning neither of us was quite ready to name. I looked away first, my heart beating too fast, my thoughts spinning with dangerous possibilities. Outside, darkness settled over the mountains, wrapping us in isolation. Inside, something new was beginning. Something neither danger nor distance could stop. The first full day at the cabin passed in strange domesticity. We moved around each other carefully, like dancers learning new choreography. Sawyer spent hours on his encrypted phone, speaking in low tones about operations and contingencies I didn't fully understand. I explored the cabin's small library, finding unexpected titles: philosophy, classic literature, even poetry. These books revealed dimensions of Sawyer I hadn't imagined, suggesting depths beneath the dangerous exterior. By the second day, something had shifted. The tension that had stretched between us began to ease, replaced by a tentative comfort. We fell into routines: morning coffee together, shared meals, evenings by the fireplace where conversation flowed more freely. Sawyer told me about his childhood, how he'd been groomed from birth to take over his father's empire, never given the choice to be anything else. "Did you ever want out?" I asked one evening, watching firelight play across his features. Every day at first. He stared into the flames. But eventually you become what they need you to be. The alternative is death, yours or someone you care about. So you adapt. You survive. You stop asking what if. The resignation in his voice broke something in me. That's not living. That's just existing. I know. He turned to face me fully. But being here with you, Jerry, this feels different. This feels like actually living. My breath caught. We were sitting close on the couch, close enough that I could see the silver flecks in his blue eyes, could count the faint freckles across his nose that somehow made him seem more human, less untouchable. Sawyer. His phone buzzed, shattering the moment. He answered with a curt greeting, then listened, his expression growing increasingly tense. I watched his jaw clench, watched his free hand curl into a fist against his thigh. When? He demanded. A pause. How close did they get? Another pause. Longer this time. Good. Maintain position. I want updates every 2 hours. When he ended the call, the vulnerability I'd glimpsed was gone, replaced by cold calculation. What happened? I asked. Though part of me didn't want to know. Kane made a move on your family. He sent people to your parents' house. My heart stopped. But my team intercepted them. Everyone's safe. I've increased security, added more personnel. They won't get another chance. Relief and rage warred inside me. They went after my family? My parents have nothing to do with this. In Kane's world, everyone's a potential weapon. Sawyer's hands found my shoulders, grounding and gentle despite the fury in his eyes. This is my fault. My presence in your life put them at risk. Stop. The word came out sharper than intended. I made the choice to help you. I'm not some victim who stumbled into this blindly. You had no idea what that choice would cost. Maybe not. I held his gaze, refusing to look away. But I'd make it again. I couldn't stand there and watch you die. I could. The admission hung between us, more revealing than I'd intended. Sawyer's hand slid from my shoulders to cup my face, his touch achingly tender. Jerry, don't analyze it, I whispered. Don't ask me to explain what I don't understand myself. This whole situation is insane. You, me, all of it. But when I think about you dying, when I imagine never seeing you again, it hurts. And I don't know what that means. Then stop thinking. His forehead pressed against mine, our breath mingling in the small space between us. Just feel. What do you feel right now? Safe, terrified, alive, wanted. I felt all of it simultaneously, a chaos of emotions I couldn't untangle. I feel like I'm falling, I admitted, and I don't know if you'll catch me or if we'll both crash. I'll catch you. The promise was fierce, absolute. Whatever happens, Jerry, I won't let you fall alone. The third day brought a shift in dynamics. The careful distance we'd maintained eroded completely. We cooked breakfast together, moving in sync as if we'd done this 1,000 times. Sawyer taught me to properly chop vegetables for the stew we were making, standing behind me to adjust my grip on the knife, his chest warm against my back. That afternoon, I found him outside, chopping wood for the fireplace despite the bandage still on his shoulder. Should you be doing that? I called from the porch. It's therapeutic. He set another log on the stump, splitting it with one clean strike. Helps me think. About what? He paused, the axe resting against his shoulder, and looked at me with an intensity that made my pulse race. About what happens when this is over. When Kane is dealt with and you're safe again. What about it? You'll have choices to make. He set up another log. Whether you want to go back to your old life. Whether you want any part of mine. Whether what's happening between us is real or just proximity and adrenaline. The vulnerability in his voice surprised me. This powerful, dangerous man was worried about my answer. About what I might choose. And what do you want? I want you to stay. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of everything unspoken between us. I want to see if this whatever we're building here can survive in the real. But I won't trap you. When you're safe, the choice will be entirely yours. That night we sat by the fire again. But this time there was no pretense of distance. Sawyer's arm rested along the back of the couch, his fingers occasionally brushing my shoulder. We talked about everything and nothing. My abandoned dreams of finishing college, his love of old books, the places we'd both always wanted to travel but never had. If you could be anything other than what you are, I asked, what would you choose? He considered the question seriously. An architect, maybe. Creating something permanent and beautiful instead of navigating destruction. Something that would outlast me. It's not too late, I said softly. You could still. Some doors close permanently, Jerry. I accepted that a long time ago. But there was longing in his expression. A glimpse of the man he might have been in a different life. On the fourth day, everything changed. Sawyer's phone rang during dinner, and the conversation that followed transformed his entire demeanor. When he hung up, there was triumph in his eyes, tempered by exhaustion. It's done, he said. Kane's been captured. My people extracted a full confession, documentation of his entire operation. He's finished. And more importantly, he's cooperating. Providing names, locations, everything. The threat is neutralized. The relief should have been immediate and complete. Instead, I felt a strange hollowness settling in my chest. So we can go back tomorrow if you want? He searched my face. You're safe now. Your family's safe. Everything can go back to normal. Normal. The word felt foreign, unwelcome. I didn't want normal anymore. I wanted these quiet mornings, these intimate evenings, this feeling of belonging somewhere to someone. Oh, that's wonderful news. But my voice must have betrayed me, because Sawyer's expression shifted, something like hope flickering across his features. Unless you don't want to go back. Not yet. The fifth day dawned with bittersweet awareness. Our last morning in the cabin, or so we'd planned. I packed my few belongings slowly, reluctant to close this chapter. The isolation that had initially felt confining now seemed precious. A stolen moment outside normal life where we could exist without roles or expectations. Sawyer found me in the bedroom, staring at my half-packed bag. We need to talk before we leave. My heart hammered as I followed him to the living room. He gestured for me to sit, then took a position across from me, maintaining careful distance as if proximity might influence what came next. Tomorrow we return to the city, he began, his voice carefully neutral. You'll be free to resume your life. I'll ensure continued protection. But from a distance, you'll never know it's there. You can forget this ever happened. Forget me and be safe. The words landed like blows. Forget him? How could he think that was even possible? Or he continued. And now vulnerability crept into his tone. You could stay with me. In my world, knowing the risks, accepting the complications. I won't pretend it would be easy or safe. But I'm offering you the choice. Why? The question emerged as barely a whisper. Why would you want that? Because these 5 days have shown me something I'd forgotten was possible. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. I've spent years just surviving, moving from one crisis to the next, never really present in my own life. But with you, Jerry, I'm actually living. I notice things, the way you scrunch your nose when you're concentrating, how you hem while cooking, the fact that you dog-ear pages in books even though there are bookmarks right there. Despite the tension, I almost smiled. You notice all that? I notice everything about you, and I don't want to stop. These days in isolation, they're the most genuine moments I've had in a decade. You make me want to be better, to find a way out of the darkness I've lived in for so long. Tears pricked my eyes. Sawyer, I'm nobody, just a college dropout serving tables. What could I possibly offer someone like you? Everything that matters. He moved to kneel in front of me, taking my hands in his. You're authentic in a world where I'm surrounded by deception. You're kind when everyone else only shows me fear or greed. You risked everything to save me without expecting anything in return. That's not nobody, Jerry. That's extraordinary. But I'm not strong enough for your world. I'll be a liability, a weakness your enemies can exploit. You underestimate yourself constantly. His thumbs traced circles on my palms. You stood up to Vincent despite being terrified. You adapted to this situation with resilience. I didn't expect. You've already proven you're stronger than you believe. I wanted to accept. Wanted to throw caution aside and dive into whatever this was between us. But fear held me back. Fear of inadequacy, of disappointment, of eventually failing him. What if I can't handle it? What if I crack under the pressure? Then we'll face it together. I'm not asking you to navigate my world alone, Jerry. I'm asking you to let me share it with you. And maybe in return you can show me how to be human again. His voice dropped lower, urgent and raw. I'm not good at this, at opening up, at vulnerability, but you make me want to try. Please. Stay with me. The tears finally spilled over. How had this happened? How had I gone from serving his table to sitting here being offered a life I never imagined possible? If I say yes, everything changes. My entire existence restructures around yours. Yes, he acknowledged honestly. But I'll make sure you don't lose yourself in the process. You'll still be Jerry. You'll still have autonomy, choices, dreams. I'll support whatever you want to pursue. Education, career changes, anything. You won't be trapped or controlled. You'll be cherished. The sincerity in his eyes undid me completely. This powerful, dangerous man was promising me freedom within captivity, autonomy within partnership. It was contradictory and impossible and exactly what I wanted. I'm terrified, I admitted. So am I. The confession surprised me. I'm terrified of what you make me feel, of how much power you already have to hurt me. But I'm more terrified of letting you walk away without knowing what we could have been. My decision crystallized in that moment, solid and certain despite the fear. I'm staying. I choose you, Sawyer. I choose us. The relief that flooded his expression was profound. He pulled me down from the couch into his arms, holding me tight enough that I could feel his heart racing against mine. You won't regret this. I swear I'll spend every day proving you made the right choice. You better, I said against his shoulder. Because I'm giving up my entire life for you, and I'm giving you mine in return. He pulled back just enough to look at me, his hand cupping my cheek. Every part of it, the good, the bad, the complicated, all of it's yours now. That night we stayed up late by the fire, talking about logistics and expectations. Sawyer explained what my life would look like. The security measures, the people I'd meet, the adjustments I'd need to make. He was unflinchingly honest about the challenges, never sugarcoating the reality I was stepping into. You'll live with me, he said. The penthouse has plenty of space. We'll establish routines, boundaries, whatever makes you comfortable. And if you ever want out, if it becomes too much, I'll help you leave. No arguments, no guilt. Your well-being comes first. The fact that he was already planning my exit strategy if needed told me everything about his character. He wasn't trying to trap me. He was offering partnership, not possession. I want to finish my degree, I said, testing the waters. Eventually. I know it seems impractical given everything. But then you'll finish it. He squeezed my hand. Whatever you need, Jerry. Your dreams don't disappear just because circumstances changed. Morning came too quickly. We loaded the car as sunrise painted the mountains in shades of gold and pink. Standing on the porch, I took one last look at the cabin. This place where everything had shifted, where I'd found something I hadn't known I was searching for. Sawyer joined me, his hand finding mine. Ready? I thought about the city waiting for us, about the life I was stepping into, about all the unknowns ahead. But I also thought about the man beside me, about the connection we'd built in this isolated sanctuary, about the possibility of something real and lasting. Yes, I said, meaning it with every fiber of my being. I'm ready. The drive back felt different from our escape. Then I'd been running toward uncertainty with a stranger. Now I was returning home with someone who'd become essential. Sawyer's hands stayed linked with mine for most of the journey, only separating when he needed to shift gears. When the city skyline finally appeared on the horizon, I felt no fear, only anticipation. This was my new beginning, my choice, my future. Whatever challenges lay ahead, we'd face them together. And somehow, that made all the difference.